Hi and welcome to Woodside Hill. I'm David. So we're on Waiheke Island, which is just outside of Auckland, in the middle of the Hauraki Gulf, so we're surrounded by water. This means we have a maritime climate. In fact, we're very close to the Pacific, so a huge amount of water around where we are. That means our climate is relatively stable. We don't have large swings between daytime and nighttime temperatures. Our typical summer temperatures are between 16 and 24. So the soil we have here is thin topsoil, brown thin topsoil, over probably about 2 to 3 metres of clay. The clay is aeolian, which means it's windblown, so many thousands or hundreds of thousands of years ago a piece of land came up on the far side of Auckland which was covered in silt, and that all blew over here. Now this is a bit of a difference to other common wine regions. We don't want our plants' roots to go down into the soil, and in fact the clay sets very hard in summer, and so the grapevine's plants are not able to penetrate that clay layer. It's relatively infertile, which means which means the grapes don't grow so much. It also means that the berries are smaller and more concentrated, which is of course what we're after for good quality wine. To illustrate the point, we have 3 bunches of Merlot here. The largest bunch is from the flat area of the vineyard. The medium-sized one is generally what's on the slopes, and that smaller one is in those parts of the slopes that are very dry. That smaller one is really a bit too small. So when you start a vineyard, you've got a number of considerations to make. The most important one is actually which tractor you're going to get, because that determines the layout of your vineyard and the width of your rows. Now, one of the big decisions to make is how high the fruiting wire is going to be. So the fruiting wire is the lowest wire that you put on your trellis or on where you're going to grow your grapes, and the height of that wire determines where the grapes are going to be, because they come at the bottom of the shoots. So for us, our wire is at 70 centimetres. That's relatively low. So that means that 70 centimetres to 180, we've got a 1.1 metre canopy area. In other words, that's where the leaves grow. That's quite a lot, and probably on hindsight a little too much for our site. That means that our sugars can get a little bit higher, a little bit quicker than we would like. So next step, once layout is done, is to decide what grapes you're going to have and where to put them, and also very importantly what rootstock to use. So our vines are all grafted, which means they have a separate rootstock to the clone on top, or the variety on top. So in our case, we're using an American hybrid, which is called 3309. Now on top of that, we've decided to plant Merlot, Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot. So those are the 3 varieties we have. So once the choice of variety is made, then we need to choose what clone within that variety. So a clone is, in other words, various subtly different variants, for example, of Merlot. In our case, we've got 347. Yeah, so for us, after much research into what other places we're doing, mostly we looked at Saint-Emilion in Bordeaux. It has a clayish type soil and is also Merlot dominant. So looking at those ratios, we decided to stick with 70% Merlot, 25% Cabernet Franc and 5% Petit Verdot. Since we made that decision, we've decided to make a rosé, so relatively speaking, the percentage in our flagship red wine, our reserve, has gone down. So generally speaking, our Merlot is around about 65%. So typically in summer, we have low rainfall in January, February, March for harvest, and the ground gets very dry. The other end of the spectrum, if we're unlucky, we can get caught out by tropical cyclones. So not cyclones per se, but the remains of them, and they can cause very heavy rain events in February and March. So something we definitely don't want. This year, so far, so good. So our flagship wine is our Woodside Hill Reserve Merlot Cabernet Franc. It's made from the slopes here mostly. The slopes tend to be drier than the top here where I'm sitting, And that means the berries are smaller, and that means that the concentrations of flavour is higher. We're very proud of that wine. It's had many 5-star reviews and done well in various competitions. To give you a quick idea of what a ferment looks like, we've got about 3/4 of a tonne in here, or 1 tonne vat. It's Merlot, and we're going to give it a plunge. See that cake on the top is quite hard. It's being pushed up by all the CO2 that's generated by the yeast and the fermentation. You can see it's pretty full on. Now there's a few reasons we need to do this plunging. One is flavour. The other is that it stops the grapes that are on top from going off. Our second wine, the Emile, we will generally make that in lesser vintages. We haven't had so many of those lately, so that's been good. It generally spends, it's the same grapes, same blend, everything's the same, except it tends to spend just 1 year in oak rather than 1.5. Well, it's been a while since I started this video. You can see the nets are off now. Autumn is upon us. It always feels like autumn is the end of the season and pruning is the start. So maybe pruning will be our next video, and this feels like a good place to finish off.